Hi there, I am Jimmy, also known as that meditation guy on Instagram. And in this conversation, I will be talking to Dan Schmidt, who is an amazing guy, the man behind these films on the YouTube channel Awaken the World Film. You may have seen some of them, like Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds. Incredible. It completely blew my mind when I first saw it. Also, the Samadhi films about the deep absorption states that lead to unity. Also, the Awakening Mind series, where lots of spiritual teachers are interviewed about the moment of awakening and what it leads to. And also, he has a new movie coming out, which we'll be talking about. So, if you are interested in authentic awakening, not the fluffy new age kind of thing, but the authentic spiritual awakening that can come when your ego dissolves and the truth of your consciousness is known, then you are going to love this conversation. Check it out. Hey everybody, I'm here with Dan from the Awaken the World Film YouTube channel. Good to be with you, Dan. How you doing today?
Awesome. Great to be here. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay, well, we're just going to jump straight in and go for it with the deep topics. So, mostly today we're going to talk about awakening. So, when we use that word awakening, what does that actually mean to you? When you use it, what does it mean?
Yeah. So for me, I use it in a way that sort of resonates with the Zen tradition. So they would call it like an initial glimpse of it would be kensho. So it's a very specific thing. So it's sort of waking up from the identification with the character that you're playing in this human life. So awakening, before awakening, it's like I think I am this Dan character, and I'm this body. But when we have awakening, I would say, what it is it's a direct experience of consciousness itself. So it's like consciousness wakes up to itself, and I realize, that which is beyond name and form, and it's that which is ever present. And what I would say the hallmark of a true awakening, a full awakening, is a recognition that what I am, this sort of primordial consciousness, has always been here as well. So it's not something new that just suddenly appears. It's like a flip of identification where, at one moment I'm having this dream that I'm this character and playing out the script of life. And then it's like, oh yeah, I've always been this consciousness or this awareness that is here. And it's been ever present, but somehow this sense of I has become identified with the character.
Yeah, that's exactly how I think of it as well. Because I've noticed when I go on social media, the word awakening is used by lots of different people in lots of different
Yeah.
ways, and it's become really diluted. Like I saw a video recently where somebody was talking about being awake, but then when I listened closely, what I realized was they'd watched a lot of documentaries on conspiracy theories. And so they were
Yes.
awake to this very specific aspect of life.
Yes.
But they hadn't had what you're describing, which is this the kensho, the flip over, the change in
Yeah.
identity. So
Exactly.
is that always, in the way you look at it, always a sudden event where somebody can say, "Oh, on Tuesday, the 20th of March, this happened," or can it happen slowly, do you think?
Yeah, I think it can happen in different ways. And like when someone has a kensho, the mind will come back at some point. So quite often, after, and sometimes people can have an awakening and not even know they had an awakening. It'll be something that happened in their life. We can, it can be that incredible flip in one moment where, there is a recognition, or it can be something gradual as well. So at our online retreats, we'll have people who they may have had a kensho at some point in their life, and then through continuous practice, it's like they're gradually coming back to that recognition. It's like the body mind becomes more permeable to that truth through doing deep sadhana. So it can be very gradual. And sometimes people, if they've had that flip, it's like they're looking for that flip again. They're trying to make it happen again, and it's not happening. But yet, if you inquire with them and ask them who they are, it's clear that awareness is here. But the mind is still searching. The conditioned mind is looking for something because when that flip happens, there's an experiential part of awakening, and for some people, it can be accompanied by an energy or an aliveness, and some phenomena, and the mind only recognizes the phenomena. It starts looking for that to recreate that again. And I think that's the part of the what you spoke about with different definitions of awakening. I think a lot of people they mistake the experience, whatever phenomena happens, for the truth of who they are. So there's whatever state or whatever energy or experience they had, the mind can only remember that. So it starts seeking, trying to recreate that experience again. So yeah, so it can happen quickly or gradually, and yeah, and every possible manifestation, I think, in between. Like it's, there's no cookie cutter way that it happens for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I'll take this moment actually just to tell you a little bit about how it happened for me because you played a role in it without knowing. So I
Oh,
heard you on a podcast with Angelo DeLulo talking about all of these things, and you mentioned about self-inquiry dyads, and I just thought, oh my God, this sounds like exactly what I'm looking for because I was bought into the idea of kensho. I'd read the Three Pillars of Zen and other books, and I also felt like I think maybe I am awake, but I'm just not sure. So I want to go on this retreat. So I called up your place in Canada and I spoke to somebody and put my name down. And then in the meantime, I realized there was a place in the UK that does it. So I booked onto their one. And I thought, well, I'm not going to wake up in 3 days, right? I need to go on the 10-day one, but I'll go on the 3-day one just to get a flavor of it. So I go along, I do the whole retreat very intensely, working with the question, who am I? And then the retreat comes to an end. I'm just about to go to bed. One of the guys running the retreat said, oh, can I speak to you? I sat with him and he said, tell me who you are. And in that moment, this flip that we're talking about happened. So I ended up calling up and canceling the trip to Canada. Um, so it was like one of these things, like it really just did. I tried so hard to make it happen on that retreat, but it
mhm.
happened on just after the retreat ended when I kind of gave up. I said, "Oh, well, it's done
Yeah,
now. Maybe I'll do another one," and I just let go. And it happened in
beautiful.
such a spontaneous moment that
Yeah.
it was almost like, "Oh, why was I trying so hard?"
That's it. That what you just said is the most important thing, and it's somehow very difficult to convey to people that the trying and the doing and whatever. If I say to you, tell me who you are, and the mind moves in any direction to try and figure out the truth, or to come up with an answer. That's the insanity of the mind is, we're trying to solve it or trying to, as if it is an answer on the level of thinking or the level of mind. But it's when that mind gives up, I always say, like, we have to enter into a don't know mind, and allow the mind just to be there without knowing, without trying to solve it as if it's a question. Because it isn't a question. It's this imperative, like I want to know, tell me who you are. It's like a demand. It's not who are you, it's if it was who are you, then there's an answer. But it's like, yeah, I want to see, I want to feel, I want to convey to me who you are. And that's something that, there's an aliveness that starts to come through when that mind it's used to grasping and controlling, it lets go, and then something else starts to come through, something that's more alive and more immediate, without the filters of the past. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Amazing to hear that. That's so, yeah, that's a beautiful sort of connection. And I didn't know that that was the case. That's amazing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, there must be, for your videos have been seen on Instagram millions of times. So there must be all kinds of people out there who've had these experiences off the back of it. And I'll tell you something funny about it as well. When I went to that first retreat, because I've been a meditation teacher for so long and I've read every book and I'd watched movies and stuff, I went along to that retreat and I half expected them to say to me, do you know what, Jimmy? You're already awake. Because
Mhm.
I understood it all and I could speak about it as if I was some kind of authority. And so, of course, they didn't say that. They said, okay, you're a prime candidate, get in the seat, let's go.
Yeah.
Um, which
Yeah.
was like a bit, my ego was a bit confused by that because I was like, well, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I'm awake. But what
Yeah.
the retreat did for me was it kind of put me in this place where at the beginning, I was asking the question, who am I? Or somebody was asking me the question. And it was like my mind came up with all of this poetry and spiritual ideas. But then at a certain point, it just ran out. And I thought, I actually don't know who I am. I'm in
Mhm.
this process and I'm stuck and I just
That's
don't
amazing.
know. And all my
Yeah.
spiritual teachings left me. And it was
Wow.
painful, but it led to the
Yeah.
right place.
That's it. So that's amazing. That humbling of the mind is absolutely necessary. Yeah, because the and I was the same. So when I went to my first Enlightenment intensive, yeah, I had all this Buddhist training and Buddhist baggage. So and the paradox was, like in Buddhism, they have these things like the insights like anatta, the idea of no self. So I was like really sure there's no self, there's no there, and but yet I'm inquiring, who am I? So so there's this friction or this impossibility, like to inquire into a self that I have this belief that doesn't even exist. So I came face to face with all these concepts that I'd been holding. And for me, the same. There was a huge humbling. I almost left the retreat. I was at one point like my ego was like, this is stupid. This is like, what am I doing here? Like these people are maybe delusional or something. And luckily the teacher kind of walked me through it. He dealt with people from Buddhist background before, and he said, just don't try and judge it, like just keep doing it and just see, maybe there is a self, or maybe there is something, but just keep going, and this is part of the process. The ego will react and not like this process. And so luckily I treated it as an experiment, and I just went along with it. And yeah, it was on my very very last dyad. I had the flip, and I was with someone who she was very like sometimes you have dyads with people where it's like it feels like really flowing, and there's a deep consciousness. But this person was like looking at my character and at the Dan character, and she didn't buy any of what I was saying. Like it was just all bullshit coming out of my mouth, just all my spiritual knowledge and stuff that I had picked up. So I was playing this spiritual character, and she was looking at me like scrutinizing that character and could see right through it. And so there was this sort of when I kept dropping all that nonsense because I could see it. It was like a mirror reflecting it back, and it wasn't fulfilling. It was, you would say something that you read in a book, and it just lands in the dyad, and it's like, oh, okay, there it is. But it's, I'm not satisfied with that. It's not. true. And eventually I did get to the same place. I realized, okay, maybe I don't know who I am, you know, and it's when we start to get really brutally honest, that's when things can shift. Yeah.
Amazing. So yeah, we had a very similar experience. And just for
Hmm.
anybody listening to this, what we're talking about is on a particular kind of retreat called the Enlightenment Intensive, you sit opposite another person. So yeah, you sit opposite and you work the question 5 minutes each way. Very intense. And when was that? Like, how long ago did you have that breakthrough?
Hmm. So yeah, so for me, I'm trying to remember now. So maybe it was so I had already had I was already making movies about all this stuff at that time. So I had had a breakthrough in out of Vipassana retreat, had sort of what I now would call a Savakalpa Samadhi experience. So that initial sort of merging experience, which I called that awakening for many years. I thought that's what awakening was. So I had that. That would have been in the early 2000s, and then I went for about a decade as a seeker, trying to get that experience back, and you know, learning everything, learning every sutra, and going down every rabbit hole, using techniques, and I, you know, was able to experience. You know, experiences and peak states, but I was actually getting farther and farther away. So I would say it was about maybe a decade after that. So it was maybe I would say around 2012, maybe around there, 2011. Um, and yeah, so it's been a while now. And I would say like that initial flip, like that kensho, that was a true glimpse. I maybe stayed in that state for in the, you know, awakened sort of kensho direct experience for maybe 2 weeks after that, and then the mind returned, and then I had a much deeper one later, a few years later, at a Zen center, just through doing just Zen meditation. It was at a Zen session, so just sitting, and then that a deeper sort of flip happened, and it was in that where I sort of started to see the you know, the true delusion of the mind, you know, how the mind just is always trying to attain some state, or trying to attain something, anything, and how the mind is just, you know, completely I realized the limitation of that conditioned mind, and how we have to enter a don't know mind over and over, if we really want to be here in this moment.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I found that my meditation practice really changed after that.
Mhm.
Because after that first flip, when I went back to try and do mantra meditation, which I'd been doing for years and years, and I taught loads of people, and it had been really helpful, really helped me change my life. And then after that flip, I went to do it again and it felt weird because it was like, why am I introducing this thing into the perfection and this kind of unlimited, boundless perfection of this beautiful mind and moment? And I
Yeah.
now need to bring in a thought to make something happen. And so
Yeah.
I struggled with that for a bit because I was like, well, how do I meditate now? What am I supposed to do? And
Yeah.
also being a meditation teacher, that was a bit of a concern.
Yeah. And to me, it took me a while to really sort it out. And I went through different periods where, you know, I realized, you know, after that flip, yeah, you know, if you can't go back into the conditioned mind to try and do something in your meditation. So all the techniques are, you know, it's unnecessary. So there's a real kind of turning point in your practice. And as a meditation teacher, you know, I went more into the direct path teachings, but then I realized people are at different stages as well. So the techniques are really valuable. All these techniques for people, if you haven't had that flip, if whatever it is that brings about less thinking and is bringing you to a space of stillness, all of these techniques are very useful. Mantra meditation or a Vipassana body scan, whatever it is, observing the breath. So if you haven't had that flip, that's all we have is those techniques. So I've arrived in that. In my last film, like in Samadhi Part 4, I really the kind of two dimensions of practice are really sadhana before awakening and sadhana after awakening. So before awakening, we work with these techniques, and there's this character doing something that we call meditation. But then once you get it, once you recognize that you're just the awareness that's here, it's just abiding as awareness. There's nothing to do, and you just see the delusion of the mind. You see all the momentum of the mind, or you could say the vasanas that are still in play. That whirlpool is still going after awakening. So you just get to see over and over as those patterns come up in life, or if you're just sitting or whatever you're doing, the vasanas will come up, and you'll see how the mind still keeps mediating your experience, and sadhana becomes something different, and it's just seeing what's already in play, and there's still a sort of burning up of those patterns that's happening, but there's no doer to it. There's no one. You don't need to make it happen. It just happens just by the seeing itself is it. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I've found the exact same thing is that if I take on a meditation student, I can't just jump directly to do nothing because
hmm,
they'll have all these wants and needs and goals. And I have to kind of meet them there in that place and see if we can find some way of getting some relief so that they can get into the meditation and believe in it. And so the
yeah,
meditation is quite active at first. And then slowly over time, I start to dial it back to being more and more and more passive. And
yeah,
I found that that's like generally a sort of good way to work because at first, if I try and be too passive, the mind just runs wild and they
yeah.
think there's something wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly how I've structured the retreats that I do. So at the beginning, I offer a sort of smorgasbord of different possible techniques because certain techniques just seem to work better for different people. So some people, the breath will be the bridge that kind of takes them more inward and connects to inner energy, and for some people it might be a body scan. Other people it might be a noting technique, just seeing what's happening in the mind, and just coming into all of it is sort of coming into a witnessing position, and just seeing what's happening in the body mind, and then yeah, bit by bit, at the retreats, I get people to just rest and let go of whatever technique and whatever doing is there as the mind starts to settle. We start to get little periods of quietness of mind. Then we can begin to inquire into who we are in those quiet spaces, like what is it that's here right now, is can you directly experience the awareness that's just here right now? And then by the end of the retreat, hopefully, it's just when if we get a glimpse of that awareness, then we don't have to do anything. We don't have to search. We can just relax into presence, just being.
Yeah, it really is the most amazing thing, isn't it? Because the when this flip happened for me, there was this sudden recognition like everything is okay. Everything has always been okay. Everything will always be okay. It doesn't
Yeah,
really matter what happens to me. It doesn't matter what happens to this body. I'm not the body. I'm not the mind. Everybody else is okay. Everything is
yeah,
just this great perfection. And look, just like you, I kind of lived with that for a few weeks. In fact, I came home from that first retreat and my wife opened the door and looked at me, and the first thing she said was, "You're different. I don't know what's
Yeah.
different about you, but you're different." And
Amazing. Yeah.
yeah, it was absolutely wild. And after
Yeah.
a few weeks, she said to me, "Look, I don't know what happened to you, but whatever it was, I want that." So 6 weeks, literally 6 weeks after that first flip, I was back in the car driving me and her to a retreat
Hmm.
so that she could experience it as well. And I thought to
Amazing.
myself, the chances of her having it as well, because I thought it's too good to be true, right? Surely it's not going to just happen for her on the first one.
Yeah.
And put her in the retreat and we both did it. So this is me having doing this retreat 6 weeks after the flip. So I'm in like a very strange place.
Yeah.
And amazingly, she had a kensho there as well and completely changed her life. And it was
Wow.
strange
Yeah.
because even on the drive there, she was saying to me, I don't understand this question. I feel like I know who I am. What I need to know is like, what's my purpose? And I was like, trust me, the question, who am I? If you get that, then you'll know your purpose. That all comes later, but
Yeah.
just be open to the question. And thankfully, she was able to do it. And it
Oh, yeah.
completely has changed her life as well.
Wow, that's beautiful to hear that, and that's very rare in a relationship. That's so amazing. Yeah, it changes everything. And my partner Lila, she arrived here. When she came, we at one point we were doing these. The I am retreat, which we were incorporating iboga microdosing and 5-MeO DMT, and it was like this complete dismantling kind of retreat. But she was an iboga provider, but she had not had an awakening, and she just jumped into these retreats and doing incredible amounts of meditation, and she did many of those retreats, but didn't have the flip, and for there was a period in our relationship where all like she literally just jumped into the fire with these retreats, so she was doing one after another, so all of her samskaras and conditioning were it was all coming to the surface, and she just got to a point where she was like, I'm this is crazy. Like I feel like it's just madness inside this body mind, and I'm done with suffering. I just want to go into this dyad process until I have an awakening. I don't care how long it takes. Let's just do it. Let's just go for it. And so we just sat, the two of us, and doing dyads, and she was on fire for awakening. Like I knew like there was something had changed, and so she didn't care about comfort or discomfort. She barely wanted to go take a washroom break. She was just like going for it, and she became more and more kind of free in this process, and she realized she doesn't know who she is, but she was laughing about it, and this energy came to life, and it took about 36 hours, and she had the flip, and yeah, again, like completely changed her life, and our relationship as well. It's you know when once you get that, the beauty is that whatever was in play in the relationship, like trying to get happiness from another person, it all of that falls away, and you're not trying to get something in the relationship anymore. So it completely changes the whole dynamic of a relationship. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Wow, wow,
Yeah.
what a story. Yeah, I didn't know that. Wow. And so you two work together on the movies and the retreats, do you?
Yeah, so we did the like in-person IM retreats for like a couple years. We did these really crazy intensive retreats, and then I've sort of shifted everything to online now. So Lila has she's actually making her own films now. So she just last year she kind of after a couple kensho, really deep kenshos. She came to a place where she didn't really know what to do. She'd sort of let go of her iboga provider character persona and all of that, and her energy was in a sort of quiet dormant state. So it was like everything she tried to do, the energy was just kind of saying no. So she was just in this place of stillness for months and months, and then all of a sudden this wave of energy came, and she decided she was meant to create a film, and she wasn't a filmmaker. She didn't know how to do video editing or anything. So it just came out of nowhere. And this beautiful, and she has this beautiful Hungarian voice where, like she's an amazing speaker. So she used her voice to as a sort of transmitter for these pointers or teachings that were coming through. And this, she had just all this energy to learn Adobe Premiere and how to edit, and she was, getting clips off the internet and this and that, and like whatever had to happen. It was like a wave that she rode, and so now she's doing her own films, and they're amazing. Like her films are some of the best direct pointers that I've ever seen. So yeah, it's amazing. So we work on everything together. She's a big support in everything, and just in life and the online stuff. She helps with facilitating sometimes as well. So.
Oh, cool, cool.
Mhm.
Um, so I was going to ask you about just to go a bit deeper into like meditation techniques, because we did
Mhm.
touch on this earlier. You mentioned about the breath and body scanning, but what kind of
Mhm.
meditation techniques are you sort of offering people at the beginning of the journey?
Mhm.
And then how do you recommend people meditate after they've had an awakening? We kind of already did
Mhm.
touch on it, but I was just wondering if there was any more sort of details that you could give on that.
Yeah, yeah. So my feeling is after watching quite a few people go through this process, there really are different sort of entry points into meditation. So, um, like in the Buddhist teachings, they have the five skandhas, the five sort of dimensions of the mind, and each of those skandhas, if we look at them as sort of worlds of phenomena, we can put attention on any part of the phenomena of the body mind, and that can become an entry point into a deeper layer of our being, and start to kind of interrupt that habit pattern of the mind. So we can put attention on the sensation layer. So we have techniques like the Vipassana body scan technique, or like a somatic descent kind of technique where you're just observing sensation, and all of these techniques, they're sort of a component where you're being attentive, single pointedly present, and there's an element of just allowing or surrendering, not trying to change anything. So with sensation, you're just being equanimous, just letting everything be as it is, and just observing. Or we can put attention on the mind itself. We can start to see what thoughts are being generated by the mind. So that's another sort of group of techniques where you're observing the mind. So there might be a noting technique, or observing the different qualities, or aspects of thought itself. Or we can turn towards the preferences of the mind, the sort of craving and aversion, so we can start to notice that as its own pattern in the body mind as well. Just noticing that, if we're sitting on a cushion, I'm always trying to get away from my pain and go towards pleasure, and so all these different dimensions, and so I just offer like I put in all my favorite techniques into the retreat, and then people can just sort of work with whatever makes sense for them. And once they find, I always encourage people, like once you find a technique that it's sort of leading in the direction of less thinking and a greater sense of ease in the body mind, just stay with that, stay with it, go all the way with it until there's it changes into something else. And I think all of these techniques, they lead to these sort of merging experiences, sort of like a Savakalpa Samadhi or jhana kind of experience where there's a sort of energy, and you become one with your meditation object with all of these retreats. So if your attention is on the breath, then you become the breath, or the attention is on the body scan, you become one with that energy. And so it all comes to this sort of merging experience. And so that is its own stage in the practice. And then so it's different for different people, and I don't have any preference. My feeling is just go with whatever works to make the mind more quiet and come to a sense of ease within the body. And then it's in that space then when we come to this kind of witnessing and just allowing that we've sort of created the conditions for kensho to happen. And then once that flip happens, that's it. There's nothing to do. There's no more instruction after that. It's just maybe what I end up doing quite frequently is just pointing out the delusion of the mind that comes back, because after someone's had a kensho, the mind will still be trying to, as we spoke about earlier, like trying to go back to some state or some experience, and just noticing that what you're seeking, what you're looking for is already here. So just seeing the delusion of the mind, that it's always looking for something, but it's a delusion. It's what you're looking for is always here. So just that's the fundamental thing to, after awakening, is just realizing that is seeing the tricks of the mind, and seeing all the different manifestations that it can take as well, because the mind is very tricky and cunning and able to you know kind of take us on a ride if we're not attentive. And so to me, it's like kind of like what Ramana Maharshi said. There's an ongoing vigilance that never ends. So the vigilance is, it's not a vigilance to do something. It's just a vigilance to notice the mind's inherent tendency to mediate the present moment. And when we, just by noticing, it sort of, self-liberates, you could say, or there's it's only when it's unconscious that there's this split or this apparent separation, from life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That all really speaks to me and is slightly differently worded to how I normally think of it. But I completely get what you were saying, because the way I was looking at it, or I do kind of look at it, is that before awakening, I was the seeker, that seeking energy, that seeking character, trying to figure it all out, make it happen. Um, and then the Kensho happened, and then I thought, okay, this is it. I am now a living Buddha. I thought that for a little while. And then
Yeah.
I realized, like, oh, I can't actually embody this in the way that I feel like I should. It didn't make sense to me that I could have seen what I'd seen, that I could know what I've know. I am literally, in my mind, I've solved the problem of birth and death. The whole universe is made of love. and I can still be triggered. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
And so then I realized like, oh, I have to double down on my practice almost. And, I even did some therapies and things because I felt like I just wanted to be a more clear window for that truth that had been discovered in the awakening, for that to shine through. And there was just too much Jimmy going on, basically.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm guessing now, and well, this was confirmed by my teacher, Shinzen Young, as well. He said, the working the shadow material and the personality stuff, that'll go on until you take your last breath. But that's kind of a fun journey now. Like I'm enjoying
Yeah.
seeing more and more freedom come into my experience and become more and more a more authentic, true version of what I am. But
Mhm.
yeah, by no means was the kensho the end of the line. It was more the end of a particular journey, but the beginning of a new journey.
That's a great way of saying it. Yeah. Yeah. I think what happens for a lot of people is, that like when we have the Kensho, there is this incredible sense of ease. There's no question, of who we are. So yeah, yeah. So when the mind does come back, when the Dan character or the Jimmy character comes back, it's like what often happens for people is they feel like something is wrong. They feel there's something being lost, or that they can't understand how can I be completely free and clear in one moment, and then there's this identification comes back, and this happens for everyone. It's just part of the path. And I think for me, the most important thing to convey to people is like when the Kensho happens, that is the space in which all of these vasanas that are in the unconscious, it allows them to come up to the surface. So it's actually inviting, everything that's been sort of pushed away into the shadows to come back. So eventually all of that, and sometimes, we only get to see those vasanas in certain areas of life. So if you're not hanging out with your family or whatever, then you don't get to see certain vasanas. There's certain ones that are sort of particular or tax time comes and you're working on taxes, and there's like the money vasanas or whatever it is. So life presents all of these different opportunities, and I think it's so crucial to not see that as a problem, to see that, actually invite that, like actually be like, oh wow, I get to, see, what's hiding in the shadows and where the identifications are, and to realize that this conditioned character is an ongoing project. As you said, it's just you know, we never get to a point where it's perfected. It's just always a work in progress, but it's not a problem. It's not like the person is not, the Buddha. Like there are no enlightened people. There are no enlightened characters. That's the paradox is, the truth of who and what we are is not this character. So this is just like the vessel. It's just like a thing that we're using as an interface for this human experience. So we can keep polishing it endlessly, but it isn't it. It's not the thing that awakens. So it's such a paradox, to remember that when I say I, like what is that I referring to? It's not this character. So, you know, we just keep doing whatever we do. The character can be completely messed up. It can be, the chakras can be all, awakened and purified, or it can be completely contracted. But in either end of that continuum, there's an awareness that is simply aware. And if I know myself to be that awareness, it ultimately doesn't matter what state the conditioned self is in.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really difficult thing to get across, isn't it? Like when I say to people, the strange thing about awakening is that you don't wake up. The you who you think you are isn't what wakes up. There is
Yeah,
something else about you that wakes up out of the dream of being you. And people look at me
yeah,
like, this sounds cool, but I can't imagine it. And you can't
yeah,
imagine it because it's the most surprising, most bizarre thing. I mean, I still even now, there's every single day, my mind will think of like, oh my God, how was I living my life before this? And I think I'm still
yeah.
surprised even now that such a, a shocking revelation could have happened. But it's
Yeah,
just, yeah.
it's mysterious. It is such a deep mystery, and I think like there's been the retreats. There's been a handful of people who when that kensho happens, like it can be just a little glimpse. It could happen for like 5 minutes or 5 seconds even, or but sometimes when there's a really deep kensho, it'll last for days or weeks. And it what can happen is it even, the waking state, the dreaming state, and the deep sleep state are sort of transparent to this ground of being and this consciousness. And the more, like, to me, whatever that is, it's this is the deepest mystery of our being, is this turiya, or this awareness that is just ever present. And it's like when people can get that what we're talking about is something that remains even in deep sleep. So it's like the body mind can be completely dropped off, but yet there's this primordial presence that just is. And there's no memory of that because there's just a sense of continuity. It's like I haven't gone anywhere. It's whatever it is that I am, which I don't know what that is, but whatever it is, it's like, it's if it's not coming and going, suddenly, the mind drops off and the mind comes back, at nighttime. Like it's a revelation, so when I know myself to be that, whatever it's beyond words, it's beyond the mind. That's what we're talking about, is that it's a true mystery of our being. And the mystics have given it all these different names, like the Atman, or the soul, or Brahman, whatever it is. But the mind can't grasp that. The mind is not. The mind can be gone, completely gone. So yeah, to me, it is a true mystery. And to me, the having a don't know mind, and like a humbled mind, is it's the gateway into that which is ever present.
Mm. Yeah, and like some people ask me sometimes like, "Oh, this sounds like something that happened to me when I was on mushrooms or when I was on LSD." And
Mm.
I noticed this question coming up so much that I went on a psychedelic retreat and I did the big hero's dose of mushrooms. And I actually asked them, I said, I want you to give me an ego death because I want to know if it's the same as what I experienced in the kensho. And
Yeah.
for me, it just was not remotely in the same league. They're not the same thing
Yeah.
at all. And so I wanted to ask you about that because that my position is that they're not the same, but I just wondered if
Yeah.
you agreed with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so, yeah, so all of those psychedelic experiences, or I think 5-MeO is a great example of an entheogen, where, if you do a big inhale of it, the ego is completely dissolved. The I is gone. And there can be what happens in that experience is, when they talk about a full release, so there's a release of the this sense of I, so going into the infinite, and when the mind comes back, People can't say what has happened in that experience. To me, that's a true entheogen experience. Is when you're not talking about psychedelic experiences or states, but that the I has completely dropped off. But it doesn't necessary, so that there can be a great benefit to that. To me, like we did it at our retreats. There can be if there are knots of energy in the conditioned self, all sorts of things can happen with 5-MeO iboga, for purifying the body mind. It's amazing, and it can make it more permeable and more likely, I think, for kensho to happen. But what so when that full release happens, it's still not kensho. It just means that the body mind has let go, and then it comes back. But it doesn't mean you know who you are. It doesn't mean that primordial awareness has woken up to itself. And quite often in those experiences, there will be sort of like a blackout period, or sometimes they describe it as a whiteout period. But whatever that is, where the I is no longer present, it's just like in deep sleep, where we can go into deep sleep, and it's like we disappear. The sense of I will disappear. But we can also go into deep sleep, if that ground of being is awake. That primordial awareness is there. It's the same with these entheogen experiences. You can either be awake through that or not. And the being awake is its own thing. It's not, has nothing to do, if so. So whatever, if it has a beginning and an end, or if it requires a pill or an inhale, it's not it. It's whatever. It's a recognition of what is always here and now. So I see all of these psychedelics, and I see them the same way that I see techniques. They're useful especially at the beginning of the path, to interrupt the body mind habit, and to engage in this deep purification. There is a great benefit to the purification of the body mind, but we don't want to mistake those experiences for the truth of who we are, and we don't want to miss kensho. So there's no, I think the true recognition, of awakening is when we recognize that it's always been here. It's not some state. It's not something that could possibly be generated by a molecule. Even though these are beautiful, merging experiences, and they can, as Aldous Huxley talked about, it's like you're blowing the gates of perception wide open. It's like this reducing valve of the body mind. It's like you're unfiltering, so you can maybe get to see all of the different dimensions of this human or spiritual experience, whatever this is. We get to see different higher worlds and phenomena, all of that. But the question is, who is experiencing that? What is this consciousness, that experiences the ordinary mundane world, and the peak experience of experiencing the infinite, and it's all this one consciousness. And when we really know ourselves to be that, it changes. It's no longer about finding these you know peak experiences to be extraordinary. Actually, it's the ordinary is realized to be that. The ordinary is you could say holy, or it's like there's a revelation to this moment. It's like William Blake said, the universe in a grain of sand, or the heaven in a wildflower. It's here, here right now. So, how do we drop this filter in life, in this moment? So the entheogens, I think they show us it's possible, but then we want to do it on our own. We want to, it can't just, we'll be always chasing if we're, reliant on some substance.
Yeah, yeah, I feel the same way. And you just reminded me then when you were saying like all of these amazing experiences can come and people can become collectors of them in a sense. Um,
Mhm.
but then it's like who is experiencing that? And you reminded me of this. I don't know if this is true, but I heard once that somebody went to Nisargadatta and asked him, are gods and goddesses real? And apparently Nisargadatta said, why would you care about such things? You are far older than any of those.
Mm, that's beautiful.
So
Yeah.
direct, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And I think, the mind loves these experiences, and especially if we come from traditions, I think, it's very common as we start to approach, these really kind of peak merging samadhi experiences. We will get some people will get these, experiences of other beings, and they'll be, meeting these different beings from whatever tradition they're from, or it's very mysterious how the mind, sort of generates these you know, experiences on different sort of spiritual levels. And if the mind gets too curious about that, it can sort of be a sidetrack on the path. Then, it's like if I meet, in, new age world, everybody is like connecting with this archangel, or this avatar, or whatever it is. And the mind can generate this whole kind of spiritual persona then around it, thinking I'm special. I have this connection with this spiritual level, and yeah, it can be just a sidetrack. It actually can strengthen the ego. Um, and people will change their name and become, you know, whatever, and it's actually just a giant spiritual persona, and can actually take us in the opposite direction. So
Yeah, yeah. My teacher, Shinzen Young, talks about this. He says the idea is to swim down from the surface level of consciousness, down, down, down to the source. But if on that journey from the surface to the source, you get sidetracked by, and in this analogy, it would be colorful fish or something like that. There would be analogous to the angels or the spirits you might come across or the past life memories. Rather than swimming down, you're swimming horizontally, and you can just swim
yeah,
horizontally forever, looking at all the crazy, interesting things that the mind throws up, and never get to find out the deepest truth.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, I was at a Shinzen retreat, actually, in Mount Carmel, in Niagara Falls, and I remember he had, he used, the ascent of Mount Carmel. I
Yes,
think it was yeah, this Saint John, uh, John of the Cross, was it? Yeah, I
it
think so.
was. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so yeah, the spiritual path is like going up this mountain, and you just want to go straight ahead. Don't get sidetracked by this or that distraction. It's like just keep going straight ahead. Yeah, Shinzen is amazing. I love Shinzen. He was one of my teachers along the way as well. Yeah.
Oh, cool, cool. Yeah, yeah. You're bringing it back to me now. So on that, the ascent of Mount Carmel, I think the quote is something like, "Do not stop to admire the wild flowers, and do not
That's it.
fear
Yeah.
wild beasts." Yeah,
That's
the
it.
wild beasts
Yeah.
being your traumas, of course.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's a beautiful pointer. Yeah. And yeah, so many sidetracks, I think we can, sometimes, and my feeling is with that, like, to me, it is almost like we're growing this tree of life inside the body mind, like so so some of those branches are, I think, necessary on the path as well. There are times where the energy will branch out and explore different things. And, I know on my own path, I went down so many rabbit holes. I got into sound healing and gongs and, all kinds of different phenomena, different tools on the path. And for me, it was I wouldn't say any of it was necessary. Looking back, it was, but it also was perfect. It was perfect as it was. It was like at that time, it needed to seemed like it needed to be explored. And I think somehow what's happening in the body mind, it is like a tree. Like if a tree is growing, a tree doesn't just grow straight up. It does branch out as it's growing, but the main trajectory is, growing upwards. So I think, I think it is a little bit of both, but no particular branch I think is necessary. But it seems to be that, the journey of life is to to branch out and explore as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and the branches kind of add a bit of color to the journey, don't they? And
Yeah,
it seems
yeah.
that life's like life itself, or the source, or whatever you want to call it, seems to like diversity and adventure and fun. And
Yeah, I think it's really important, actually. Yeah, I just my partner and I just watched a really neat film last night that I hadn't watched in ages, and it had a sort of similar message in it. It was oh, what was the name of it now? It was Harold and Maude. It was about this little guy who he was like this um, very intelligent young man who he didn't buy into the Matrix basically. Like he was very sort of aloof, and he was always kind of faking his own death, and he was very very sort of detached little character. And he met this old lady who was just totally free. Like she was just insane and just loving life. 80-year-old lady. And they had this incredible relationship. And she was sort of brought him, so he was like, the the sort of archetype of detachment, and she was the archetype of like the Shakti in life, so the Shiva and Shakti. And to me, that's what it is. It's like, being fully engaged with life, fully in life, like dancing, doing whatever life offers, like really going into it, but without attachment. That's just being awake within that as well, and not so whatever life brings, not getting caught in the suffering of it as well. And
yeah.
I see that as that to me, the ultimate sort of Buddha archetype is a sort of Shiva Shakti. um, it's both. It's kind of like what Osho had a great analogy. He talked about Zorba the Buddha. So you had like the Buddha is like awake and free of suffering, but he always said, I would never trust a Buddha that can't dance. So the Zorba the Greek,
Yeah.
was like this gregarious character that's like, really in life, loving life. And to me, like both of those together, that's it. That to me is the Hotai, in the ox herding pictures of Zen. The 10th stage of the ox herding pictures represents like the full enlightened being. And that Hotai, the Buddha, is kind of like that. He's like this, the fat, jovial Buddha who goes back into the world, and he's just totally free, but he's not attached to any of it as well. And, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Do you know the weirdest thing just happened, right? That
Mhm.
film that you were talking about, Harold and Maude,
Yeah.
that's like a 1970s film, right? Very,
Hmm.
it's an old film.
Very old.
I've never seen it. I've never heard anything about it. And then just
Hmm.
yesterday, something came up in one of my social media about it.
Yeah.
And so I find that
Wow.
this happens more after Kensho. It's like I don't know whether you pick up on things more, but you know, the synchronicities seem to just go
Hmm.
constantly. So I'm going to have to watch this film now because
Awesome.
it's too
Yeah.
weird that it happens yesterday and now you mention it today.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about this film. We just came across it again yesterday and hadn't watched it in decades actually. So yeah, it was one of my favorite films many years ago, and it really holds up. Not many films from the 70s really hold up, but it's yeah, a beautiful one. Yeah, I feel like those synchronicities really do happen the more I think we are are awake and you know, I think the conditioned mind keeps us in a on a track where you know you're narrowed in and you don't see the synchronicities that are happening all the time. And yeah, it's a good question. I don't know, you know, is it are the synchronicities happening because of awakening, or are they just there all the time and we just miss them? And yeah, I don't know the answer to that one. So
No, neither do I. But I'll definitely watch the film. Okay, I was going to ask you then about the new movie. So you've got your latest film coming out is about Ramana Maharshi. That's right?
yes, yes, yeah. So I've connected with some partners, Bill Free and Leif Heimbold, and yeah. So we've created the Awakening Mind series together, and so parts one, two, and three, and then Leif has really sort of this is his baby. The Ramana film is something he felt very personally connected to, and so when they were shooting the Awakening Mind films, um, he also was asking different swamis and teachers and gurus, you know, about Ramana. So we have had all this amazing footage, and it's sort of, you know, the way Leif describes it, like it just assembled itself. It's just put itself together. So it's a beautiful film about Ramana's life and his teachings, and it's called Turiya. So it's really you know, some of the teachers are just offering some of the most clear pointers, some of Ramana's clearest teachings, you know, about self-inquiry and just turning towards the self. And you know, Ramana was one of those real direct path teachers. So he didn't really offer a lot of techniques for people at the beginning of the path. He just said, you know, turn towards the self or put attention on, you know, the awareness. Awareness is just another name for the self, and just stay with that and relentlessly. That's it. Like he was relentless in his pointing, and you know, I can't think of a better teacher or a better pointer. You know, that's it. Like Nisargadatta said the same thing. Like just stay with the I am that's here, or you know, beingness that's here. And if you do that, you know, everything that is the false I will be purified. And you know, at first, what you'll see is just the false I, you know, but eventually, if you just stay with that, you know, that intention to know yourself continuously, um, that's the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And is this going to be a series of movies or is it a one-off?
It's just a one-off, yeah, and it's just a 1 hour film, so it's fairly short, but it just yeah, beautiful sort of you know, talking about Ramana's life and his unique journey, how he you know, he had a death experience early on, very as a young man, and then he just sort of walked out of his life. He felt pulled to this mountain, Arunachala, where he just went and just sat, just went in a temple near this mountain, and for 10 years didn't speak, and went through this incredible purification process and almost died. Someone found him there and kind of grabbed him and gave him some food, and and then eventually he started to speak again and to teach. So he was in a very, very deep Turiya state when he was in that part of his life, that sadhana. And then it's like he sort of came back into the world, and eventually became this incredible pointer. A lot of his teaching was just his being. Just being there in silence. People could receive almost like a transmission from him. So
Well, I can believe it, yeah, and I can almost kind of imagine it because I've been on retreats, the ones we were talking about earlier, like the EI, where I've been opposite somebody who has a kensho or just had one like moments before we started. And there's something about just being with somebody and looking in their eyes when they're in that, I say in that state, because it is a kind of state, but it's also not. It's like the state is that their ego has been completely wiped out, and it
hmm
feels like to me like I'm looking into infinity.
yeah,
For example, I'm thinking of a time now when this happened. Previously, I would have been looking at, the girl who works in the kitchen, normally at the retreat center, who just happens to be on this retreat. But now I'm looking at her, and it's almost like she's gone. It's her body, but
yeah,
their eyes are just taking me to another place. And then what I realized when I stayed with it, and I stayed with it in this particular practice, we just didn't talk at all. She was not capable of talking. There was just a
mm,
huge amount of energy come through in this interaction. And
yeah,
from the other side of it, it was like the energy was kind of coming into me, like I was absorbing it, and it
yeah,
took me into a completely different place. And so I can imagine that with Ramana, it's like that. You go and sit with him, you look at him, and you just start to be energetically and mentally transformed from being in that space.
yeah. It's so mysterious, but yeah, that's it. And I've at retreats, like if someone has a kensho, I love when they go back and they start doing dyads with people, because yeah, there's something different. People feel, there's something with this person, they're totally present, they're in ease, and it transmits somehow. It's there's an aliveness there that yeah, it is almost like a flame that can catch, someone else can catch someone's kensho, or quite often in dyads, one person is going through the awakening, and their partner will be profoundly affected by it as well, and then maybe a couple of dyads later they'll have an awakening, because they start to see, whatever would have happened, they see the mind dropping away, and this presence coming forth, and it's like yeah, it's very mysterious how it works, but I think that whatever it is in that stillness, when it's just consciousness looking through the vessel, it's very, very powerful. Yeah, I had an amazing Zen teacher when I was at the Zen center, and I'm quite sure he was in a kensho state that I think had a huge effect on me, just seeing him, where you go and you do the docusan, where you sit in front of the teacher, and I remember just sitting in front of him. I sat down, and My mind had questions, I think, at the first time I went to see him, and I didn't. It was disarming. There's just this absolute presence looking back at me, and the mind went silent. I was just like sitting there looking in his eyes, and like a minute passed, and then the mind was like, "Oh, I'm supposed to say something here," or, and but there was this incredible sort of transmission happening, and it is very mysterious. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you just reminded me actually of that first awakening that I had on that retreat. I think we sat there in silence for 10 minutes, me and the teacher that I was with. And then at some point, I just looked at him and I said, "That doesn't seem like there's anything to say." And he just
Mhm.
laughed and went, "Yep."
Yeah. That's the thing. It's so simple. It's like it's beyond simple. That's it. Like there is nothing to do. There's nothing to say to make it happen. It's when we come into this space of just being okay with what is. And yeah, and quite often there, like, people will say, this is it. Like, this is it's so stupid. Like this is what all the teachings and books are pointing to, is it's just being. It's just being here, and that's it. Like, there's nothing to do. And I've had people actually get mad and say, like, why didn't you just tell us this? Like there's so much talk about spirituality and all these teachings and everything. Like, just tell us to just be here. This is it. It's so ridiculously simple. There's nothing to do. And and of course that's what every teacher is trying to do, just point to that. But yeah, there's almost like it is like a cosmic joke when we get it. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I love that phrase cosmic joke because I felt I was driven to get the awakening in a sense because I believed there was a something called a cosmic joke, and I felt like I was on the outside of it and I wanted to
Mhm.
be on the inside of it. And then when I did finally get the cosmic joke, it was just like, how have I lived my whole life thinking that I was this guy
Yeah.
called Jimmy, and there was this
Yeah.
huge other aspect to me this whole time.
Yeah, that's it. It's that guy that thinks he's on the outside of it was never you. It was never
No.
you in the first place. Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing is it is all it's like an identity problem. That's all this is. This whole kensho and flip is just not knowing who we are. And we somehow this whole game of Maya is, we become identified with these characters, and that it's the whole thing is the beginning and end of the path is just recognizing the truth of who and what we are.
Yeah, yeah. When I tried to describe it to my wife, I think I said the whole process was me trying to get out of prison. And then when it happened, I realized that that sense of being me, the one who needed to escape something, was the prison. And then,
Yeah,
funnily enough, I saw that in one of your movies, the exact same
yeah,
analogy. It just seems so
yeah.
obvious once you've seen it.
Yeah, yeah. And hearing things like that, people hear pointers like that, and I think they seep in a little bit by bit, and then, sometimes when that flip happens, then it's like it becomes clear, and then, all those pointers that we've received in our life, it's like, okay, this is what they've been pointing to all along. It's just so self-evident. But yeah, there's a giving up. There's a, whatever that is that makes the mind sort of the sense of I unhooks from the mind, and all this whole layer of thinking, and thoughts and beliefs and preferences, whatever it is that can allow me to just be here without looking at that screen of phenomena, and just recognize this awareness itself. That's it. And I don't know, there's an element of grace in that, or somehow, maybe a pointer will land, or maybe it's after doing 3 days of an intensive dyad process, or 10 days of meditation, the mind will become quiet. But for me, it seems that these practices where you put the ego in conditions of no escape, it really seems to create the conditions for that possibility. But there is an element of grace or something in that it just happens. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a kind of ripening up process, isn't there? Things just kind
Yeah.
of get ripe in the moment. So when I work with people, quite often I'll do dyads or we'll do pointing, we'll do all these things, but I will do my best to try and get them to go on a retreat because the one thing I can't do in an hour-long session on Zoom is create that sense of the conditions for the ego to have no escape, like the way you say it. It's
Yeah.
like because they can take on everything I'm saying as a teaching, and that's not what I'm trying to do. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a difficult thing to get across.
Yeah, and that's really the key is, yeah, there's an element of continuous practice, I think, that whatever those conditions are for the mind to be ripe and sort of in this open state, and it yeah, it really is, there is a process to it. And that's what the yogic eightfold path, or the Buddha's, or yeah, the eight limbs of yoga, sorry, and the noble eightfold path, all of that. It's just, there are these processes where it's like a gradual ripening, or a gradual preparation, where we enter into this space where we're just here witnessing, just allowing. And then it's in when that mind is not grasping and doing anything, then we've sort of created the optimal self-inquiry conditions. Yeah, but it really is a process. Like, you can't do it in 1 hour. It's like, there sometimes the mind will, it's just so habituated to staying in its pattern, and it really takes an incredible, um, it's an effortless effort to to not do, to just be here, and to keep letting go, keep disidentifying from whatever phenomena is coming up. And eventually the mind will, you know, either gets confused, or it gets tired, or it's in some sort of open state where, that flip can just happen. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, I think we'll bring this to an end. But thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate your time and all of the wisdom that you've shared. And also, just I appreciate the role you've played for me in my life. To hearing that podcast, learning about Enlightenment Intensives has had the most incredible effect on my life. It's sent my life into a completely different direction because, like I told you, my wife's now had an awakening. She's even gone and done the training to be able to do hold those retreats now,
Oh,
which is
wow, cool.
yeah, very
That's
like not
amazing.
the way I expected our life to go.
Wow.
Um,
So are you guys doing enlightenment intensives yourselves then, or you will be?
We will be, yeah. We're
Oh,
currently
amazing.
looking to buy a house in the UK,
Uh-huh.
which is going to be big enough to do small retreats, probably like 10 participants,
Wow.
plus us two and a chef. So we're looking for somewhere in nature because I think that plays an important role. Get away from all the hustle and bustle, bring
Yeah.
people, and then they'll think, oh, I'm going for a nice meditation retreat, but when they get there, we're gonna say, right, here we go. This is the real thing. Let's do it.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, nobody ever really knows what they're signing up for at these retreats. The mind can't know, but that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no informed consent for enlightenment. That's what Shinzen always says.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And one last thing, where if people want to learn about you and take your courses, watch your movies, just say something about that if you like.
Sure. Yeah. So Awaken the World enlightenment.com is kind of the repository for all the films. There's a schedule page. So we have a thing. It's a called the perpetual sadhana. It's a 7 day cycle. So you can if you want to jump into that cycle, you can do that at any point. You can kind of do meditation with the daily group, and we do dyads every evening. There's an I am app just created specifically for self-inquiry dyads. We're just about to launch version 3.0 of the app. It's been a long journey getting it all bug free, so I'm have my fingers crossed. This is the final version of that, and yeah, so that's ongoing. And if you're looking for, just a container to create those conditions of no escape, and the dyads are an amazing part of that as well. They're ongoing every night. So yeah,
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for that, Dan. Really appreciate it. And
yeah,
maybe
thank
we'll do
you.
another one in future.
Yeah, thank you. Great to connect. Thank you.